a stronger Indian Ocean activities actually contribute to the Indo-Pacific as well.
So let me stay with the Indian Ocean and let me turn to Minister Amina Chona. Maybe she can come in at this stage. Siddhartha, can we get Aditya, can we get the mic here? And maybe.
Thank you, Samir. It's good to be here. I was here years ago as a Raisina young fellow. And Minister, I am representing the Maldives, and I'm the Environment Minister as well. And climate change is an existential threat for us. I do believe the commitment made by India in COP26 is by far one of the most ambitious mitigation targets we heard. And I also understand how complicated energy transition is for India, particularly because we still have millions without access to power, and development is a necessity for India and for South Asia as well. But climate change, as I said, is an existential threat. I don't think it's just for small island nations like the Maldives, but even for India. We have the highest mountains in South Asia. We also have small island states like us, which is one of the lowest countries in the world. We don't have a higher ground. So my question is, as we enter into a world which is complicated by energy, conflict, and issues like this, we also have climate change before us that we can't wait to address these things until countries are comfortable to deal with it. So how do you see climate politics will evolve given the nature, given the urgency of this issue that we have? Thank you.
Well, you know, from the Indian perspective, I mean, first of all, I agree with everything you said. And from the Indian perspective, there are two parts to this issue. One is climate action, and I look at it in terms of what we ourselves do, and the other is climate justice. And we need both, which is everybody needs to do the utmost that they can, but also ensure that there's the more vulnerable, the more exposed, the less resourced countries and societies are actually supported in this challenge. Now, we all know the story of climate change. How there have been repeatedly the promises of resources which have been given in COP after COP have not been kept. But at the same time, because others are not keeping the word, doesn't mean you don't do what you can do and will do. And that's the approach which we have taken. From our point of view, if you look between, I'd say it's now 6 years since Paris happened. We are probably among the few G20 economies which have actually kept to our Paris commitments. And we are careful about making commitments. We don't overpromise. We try, but we are sincere about what we promise. So I'm pretty confident that what we have committed to do in COP26, we will do. In terms of the challenges which small island developing states are facing, for us, that comes right on top because they are actually the most vulnerable. Whether it is, many of our initiatives, the International Solar Alliance Initiative, the Coalition for Disaster Resilient Infrastructure Initiative, some of the newer initiatives that we tabled at COP26 are actually aimed at highlighting the predicament of small islands. And again, I say this, look, there are conflicts in the world. I'm not minimizing them. I fully understand the seriousness of it. We are very, very focused on it. But let's also remember that there are simultaneously a lot of other things going on in the world, and something like climate change should not get off the global attention because something else is going on.
So let me remain with the Indo-Pacific and turn to one of our young fellows of this year, Tina Jatin from Mauritius. Tina, would you like to take the mic from our young fellows group? Yeah, there you go.
Good morning. I'm Tina from Mauritius, actually young member of parliament from Mauritius. It's a pleasure being here amongst you all, and I heard my counterparts, especially from Madagascar and Maldives here. So my question to you, Excellency, is twofold. So with the devastating effects of the Ukraine-Russia war and the disruption in supply chain, as you mentioned earlier, coupled with the rising inflation, we are seeing increasing instability, frustration amongst people across the world. And recently we saw what happened in Sri Lanka, and this is also happening a bit across the region. So my question to you is, how did India actually, I know you also spoke about India being moving towards self-reliance, or should I call it strategic autonomy, while also being multi-aligned and, as Mr. Panda said it, trying to up its role in aiding other countries. So the first question is, how did India go about its communication so that the whole population understands the basis? So, because I know we are in the largest democracy of the world, but no one has actually expressed in terms of riots or going to the streets. And second thing, in terms of upping its role in trilateral relationships, and you spoke about helping within sub-communities or community with small c, and how can India actually help the Indo-Pacific region, and more specifically the SIDS, and more specifically Mauritius? Thank you.
Look, let me actually give you a set of answers. One, let's look at the immediate crisis we are facing, the knock-on effects of the Ukraine conflict. You know, as I said, one impact of that we see in energy prices, but one we see in terms of food shortages and food inflation. And India can make a difference today by stepping in terms of export of agricultural commodities, especially wheat, and that is the case. We are trying to see how we can supply more wheat to meet global shortfalls. There are, of course, some constraints here, which is that what we have in terms of public stocks, there are WTO limits on trading with those stocks. But this is a very unusual situation, so we hope that the WTO would look at it in that manner. But if we can contribute today to alleviate food shortages, whether it's it's government purchases, expanding the markets, helping the World Food Programme, I think this is a very big contribution that we can make, and we are prepared to make that. In terms of something longer term, you know, we've always had a history of South-South cooperation, even when our resources were less, our income levels were lower. We've always tried to do, we tried to share what we could. It's been visible in terms of projects, in terms of training, in terms of education, and in terms of sharing experiences and best practices. Now, that has steadily expanded as we have become bigger. I mean, in the case of Mauritius, there are some very good examples of that development